Hey, welcome guys to the weekly Novusphere meetup. Uh, so I haven't been there for the last few weeks because I've been busy with things on the weekend, so I wasn't able to make it. But one of the recent discussions that we've been having in the chat is potentially moving the time of the meetings if it would result in better turnout. So you can let us know if there would be a more suitable time than the time that we're currently doing it at. Of course, we'd love to have more of the community come out and have live engagement. We do know a lot of you guys listen to the recordings and then offer feedback later on, but live discussion is always much better. So, to give a few updates as to what's currently going on, we're still working on the Novusphere DB, which is the application layer software that mainly deals with what app developers looking to develop things on Novusphere will be interfacing with. And CodeBlue has been using that in his project, so I'll get to that a bit later. I'll pass it over to him so he can talk a bit about what's been going on his end. But to give an update about what we're currently doing is we are looking to release two things relating to that, as well as a few security updates in regards to the software. But the first major update that we're looking to put out relates to we are going to be using an existing blockchain-based application that would function very similarly to how other Novusphere applications would work, which is the memo.cash application built upon Bitcoin Cash. And what we're going to be doing with that is we are going to be building a plugin to the Novusphere DB software so that it can read that data from the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, index it, and then that can be used to build a website just like how the memo.cash website works. And this is more so done just so that we have a plugin which represents interfacing with Bitcoin-based blockchains. So I thought this was a good example of a real-world application that's built on a Bitcoin-based blockchain. Other real-world blockchain applications that I think are popular aren't using the Bitcoin blockchain, such as Steemit, for example, which I think is one of the biggest decentralized applications out there. So we're looking to release that later this week. And after that is out, what we will be working on, and this is, I guess, the last major thing that needs to be done, with the Novusphere DB software is we will be working on an EOS plugin for the software to index data from EOS into the database. And so what that represents, regardless of whether we choose to go with EOS or not, is it shows that the software can be used with multiple blockchains. It is blockchain agnostic, and it doesn't really matter what chain we choose to use in the future, as the software should easily integrate with it as long as a plugin can be written, which bridges the blockchain to the Novusphere DB software. So aside from that, I will be making a Medium post in a few hours after this meeting has ended. And that Medium post will basically be covering the the voting procedure that's going to be occurring for voting on EOS. And we're going to have some discussion about some of the stuff that's been going on in EOS a bit later. But the voting procedure will be very similar to the previous vote that happened. So if you aren't too familiar with that, it will require you to basically go to a web page and the form will be filled out for you. And all you have to do is copy some text and sign a message. So to sign a message, you need the Qt wallet, and it does not actually need to be synced to the mainnet. You just need the Qt wallet, and as long as your private key is imported, you can sign the message through the client. And we'll have a guide on how to do that as part of the blog post. Uh, Now, if you are neutral on whether we use EOS or not, that is to say you don't care whether we follow status quo, which is to continue developing our own blockchain, or you would prefer us to continue with the possibility of using EOS, we ask that you actually vote for both options, so you treat it as an approval voting system, so you vote for both yes or no. And this just lets us better gauge voter turnout rather than people abstaining from voting if they are neutral. So, Code Blue, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you can give us a small update about how things have been going on your end with the anime website that you've been working on, and if you've had any problems with the Novusphere DB software, and how that's been going for you.
Um, I haven't really run into any problems actually. I'm pretty much around, like pretty close to completing integration with Novusphere DB. Um, yeah, so I think I'm pretty much ready to like host the database somewhere because right now all of it's on local, but I think it's more or less done integrating with the front end.
Okay, I can look to get you something set up this week, and I can give you access to a database instance, and you can use that if you want. And then maybe you can share what you've built with the community so they can sort of see how a live application would work.
Yeah, I just need to get it hosted and yeah.
Okay, so I guess another thing that we need to talk about is what's been going on in EOS, because especially given the vote is coming up, there's a lot of controversial things that have happened within the last 2-3 weeks. So I'll try to go off the top of my head here with all of them, and I'll try to address how they relate to this project in particular and the concerns that other people in the community have raised. So one of the issues that people brought up earlier today is what if arbitration clamps down on Novusphere. Um, and so the remark basically is it not a bit ironic that a platform that's supposed to be censorship resistant is being built on, or potentially being built on EOS, which has the ability to censor people. So my response to this is arbitration is not to be used in such a way where just because you don't like something, it gets shut down. That's not how it works. So what arbitration is for mainly is when, for example, an event like theft occurs and you need an account frozen to be investigated. And the thing about freezing accounts that seems very off-putting to people is this sort of comes to people as a shock that people are freezing accounts on a blockchain because a blockchain is supposed to be permissionless. But what a lot of people don't realize is this can actually be done in both Bitcoin and Ethereum. And what I mean by that is, I'll use Ethereum as the case here because it's really no different than Bitcoin in this aspect, anyways. But it's actually easier for the community to do it on Ethereum than it is for them to do it on Bitcoin because of how centralized mining is. There are two mining pools on Ethereum which contain 50% of the the hash power, uh, and to freeze an account, you would need to do two things. The first thing you would need to do is you would need to reject all transactions that are coming from that account or that, let's say, pay money to that account. And when I say account, I mean address on the Ethereum blockchain. And the second thing that you would need to do is, assuming you own 50% of the hash power, you would need to be willing to orphan and reorg the blockchain if the other 50% or the other 49% was to allow any transactions that bypassed this blacklist. So in doing so, you could actually freeze an account on the Ethereum blockchain. Now, what you couldn't do in this case on the Ethereum blockchain without a hard fork is take funds from one account and return it back to another. So, in other words, seize the funds or seize the assets and then move it elsewhere. This was what was essentially done in the DAO incident, and this required a hard fork. Now, on the other hand, on EOS, this is built natively into the protocol. So block producers have a superpower, and these superpowers can only be used when 2/3 plus 1, so that's 15 currently, block producers agree that something should be done, and then they could sort of bend the rules of the traditional blockchain. Now, what people need to remember here is being a block producer is also a job. So if people were to start colluding in such a way and just taking people's funds for no good reason that the community didn't agree was a good thing to do. So in the case of Ethereum, it seems the majority of the community agrees that bailing out the DAO was the right thing to do, which is of course debatable, but as we can see, Ethereum still is the major chain to this day in comparison to Ethereum Classic. So if block producers were to do this on EOS, they would lose their job and be voted out, or they would potentially greatly damage the value of the chain itself. And in a worst case scenario, you could possibly see a fork even starting that remove this functionality from the blockchain altogether. So I can't really see arbitration and block producers using this in such a way where it's done out of malice. Um, it seems really that the freezing of the accounts was done out of a good intent, but the community it's really hard to gauge how the community reacted to this because uh, if we were to gauge based on price, we would say it's been a really negative reaction, but that's hard to say as well because the whole crypto market has been crashing as of late. So we can't really gauge on that aspect. We can't really gauge on social aspect either because it's hard to really tell if you're just reading Twitter or Reddit or some social forum who's actually been a part of the EOS community for a long time. You have a lot of people who will infiltrate from other communities just to stir up shit because of the tribalism that often occurs in crypto. Now, one thing that I don't like and I will speak out against that happened in EOS is I don't like the way they went about freezing the accounts, which is the ECAF, the foundation that handles arbitration. They put out an order that basically said, well, the block producer should freeze these accounts, and we'll tell you why later. And that should never happen. There should always be a clear stated reason as to why they are giving this order, and so other people can investigate it. And I don't think this should ever happen again in the future. I think this sets a really bad precedent. However, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be, and it's not, you shouldn't interpret it as bad as I'm making it out to be right now, because Dan, as well as the other major people and the block producers developing EOS, have already promised that what they are working on is they are working on developing a transparent on-chain form very similar to Reddit that will be one of the first apps, I assume, to work on EOS, and that will be used to handle all ECAF cases. So it'll be very transparent, everyone will be able to evaluate, and everyone will be able to contribute. So the last point to bring up in regarding to the ECAF is that very similar to how the EOS network had to start, because EOS did not have a centralized launch. One sec. EOS did not have a centralized launch where Block 1 released the software and everyone was just able to download and use it and bootstrap to the network. Block producers had to actually get together and sort of launch a network. So for a short period in time, you basically had unelected block producers that weren't chosen by the community, but these were the guys that were trying to start the chain. And if they weren't elected and they were potentially voted out now on the current running mainnet. And the ECF is very similar to that right now, whereas it's currently in its infancy. The people running the ECAF were not voted in by the community, um, but they are essentially helping bootstrap things currently. And I think as EOS continues to progress further and we get the decentralized form, we're going to see the ECAF change more into a DAC, which is more of an autonomous organization. And we'll see more of a community input on how the ECAF handles things, as well as how it should proceed in certain cases. So I don't think there will be so much of a community lashback as there will be potentially trolling in other communities. But I definitely think a blockchain that handles theft and has a way of returning funds like that to the users is more likely to have mainstream and widespread adoption than any of the other blockchains we have right now. As much as people hate to admit it, and this might be a bit blunt to say, but we have a lot of idiots. And what I mean by that is a lot of people fall for some ridiculous scams that look so obvious that it's a scam. Like, for example, the whole Twitter, send me 1 Ethereum and you'll get 10 Ethereum back, or whatever it is. People fall for that stuff, and there's no safety net in crypto to really help these people. And bank accounts every day get hacked, and luckily, banks actually return the funds to the users for the most part. So I think we definitely need something like that if we ever want to see crypto go mainstream. As much as a lot of the early supporters in crypto, they believe they have the mindset of be your own bank. Um, it's a noble mindset, but a lot of people don't want that responsibility. Or I shouldn't even say they don't want it. They're not capable of handling that responsibility. So I think that covers most of what's happened with the EOS drama. Maybe if I've missed something, someone can point that out, then I can probably go over that as well and give my opinions on it.
I would agree with almost everything that you said there. Um, like the one thing that I think was the most controversial was it, and it kind of throws up a little flag and concern to me that they would it was almost like they didn't expect for this kind of thing to happen. You know, the spam and the attack, and then their response immediately even threw up a bigger flag to say that they weren't ready to or didn't have the resources to release, an order and explanation of that right away. They said the logic and reasoning for this order will be posted at a later date, blah blah blah, and it kind of throws a bit of unprofessionalism into the PR aspect of it. I don't know if that's
Yeah, I
something that
think a lot
concerns
of it
anyone.
was heavily used to as FUD for against Diaz. I believe they did actually put out the reasons for it within 24 hours, so the time was relatively good. It's not like it took them a week to put out the reasoning behind the order. So I don't really think that's the problem so much, but I feel like as if this was all public, like let's say they had a public forum and people could sort of skim through that information themselves, the unedited information, then it would be fine. But what the ECAF puts out in the end when they give the order is they give a really condensed summary as to like what's going on, why it's going on, that sort of thing. But even if we didn't have the condensed summary, if we had the raw information as to what was going on, I feel like it would be fine because people would at least be able to evaluate what's going on if they really cared. I think one of the other major things that EOS really lacks right now is, and this is something Block One themselves have said they're working on, is EOS lacks a fully fleshed out UI wallet. So right now, there's so many features that are in EOS that you can only do via command line, and mm, that's not going to apply for most people. Like, most people aren't exactly the most command line savvy of people. So they need like pretty interfaces to deal with that stuff. I think actually right now there's actually only like, well, there are simple GUI wallets for EOS. But what I was saying is, like, not all the features, or, there's a lot of features that are missing that are in the actual software itself that are not available at this time through the GUI wallet. I mean, Ethereum was like this too when it first released, and so was Bitcoin. For Bitcoin, when it launched for like a year or two, yeah, Monero was like that too. I forgot about that one. So there were really long periods where, like, none of these things had, good GUIs. But Block One has said that they are working on one, and they are working on an iOS application as well that is going to work with the Enclave software of iOS. So I think that's actually a really good step in the direction of hardware wallets. And I do know, I think that there has been support for building hardware wallet-based software for EOS. There have been some bounties put out on that. So I think all in all, really what it boils down to is a lot of what we're seeing right now is the project's new, it's in its infancy, it's still trying to figure out some things. But I really think that a lot of these problems will get solved relatively quickly, and they're not going to be permanent problems. So that's my take more or less on all the drama that has occurred within EOS as of lately. I'm not really sure if there's anything else that I've missed, because I've more or less gone off the top of my head, but if there is, then someone can bring it up either in the chat, and I can address it later on. Oh, yeah, I guess I should probably mention this as well. The reason Unicron did not make it to this meeting is he told me that he is currently unavailable. He's in the process of moving, and so he doesn't have his computer set up and readily available. So I don't know if that'll be the case for next week as well, but it is at least the case for this week and why he hasn't been able to attend.
Lutz, if you're talking,
So,
you're on mute. I don't know.
sorry?
I saw Lutz light up there, but I didn't know if he was on mute on purpose or not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I guess I'll give a brief summary, and then if anyone has any questions, we can go over that. So just give a brief summary of everything that's happening. We're going to see a plugin released for the Novusphere DB software, as well as some updates that are going to occur relating to the memo.cash app that's built on Bitcoin Cash, sort of to just help demonstrate how the Novusphere DB software works, how to build things using it. We have an EOS plugin that's later to come for the Novusphere DB software. Code Blue has been working on integrating his anime site with it. Well, this heavily relates to the stuff that Code Blue is working on, because he has mentioned before that we could easily build that into his interface, so I'm very interested in seeing what he's worked on and how that works. So I'll be getting with him later this week to get him set up with a live database so that he can share things with people publicly, because right now I believe he's been developing entirely on localhost, so people can't exactly access that database information. Voting will start a few hours after this meeting's done. I'll be posting a Medium post. It'll give just a summary of what's going on, and the voting details. And lastly, we covered some information regarding EOS, which is going to continue to be a topic, I guess, for at least the next month or so as we progress through the vote. So if anyone has any questions, now's a good time. And if not, then I guess we can look to wrap up here. Relatively short and brief meeting.
We got some people typing. Any updates on like white paper or visual models of how this is going to work or anything like that?
Unicron would have more to give. I think he's mentioned to me before that he has some images, diagrams to share in regards to that. As for the white paper, that's still currently available publicly. You can get it off the main website, novusphere.io. And that'll always have the most up-to-date published white paper. So there might be a few changes that we make now and again, just to correct some certain things. But if there's any major changes, we'll let the community know in that regards. Well, what do you mean about the Anon issue?
Is it a fully decentralized Anon project still?
Yeah, why wouldn't it be? I don't really see an anonymous project building on EOS as so much of a problem. Like I said, arbitration isn't meant to handle things and say, I don't like this application, therefore we should remove it. It doesn't violate anything in regards to the EOS Constitution. And I think that's the best reference point that we can use as to whether arbitration or anything would ever be used against the project is referring to the EOS Constitution. Now, granted, the EOS Constitution hasn't been fully ratified yet because it hasn't been voted on, so the way they want to handle that is each section so far of the EOS Constitution will be voted on. And I think there's a lot of contention against one of the sections which talks about removing an account after 3 years of inactivity. I can't possibly see that passing in the final constitution, but again, I think the Constitution's a good reference point. So if you can point to something in the Constitution that you feel potentially endangers Novusphere, I'd be happy to take a look at that and discuss it.
You may have gone over this, but did you talk about how the voting is going to work and what that's all about this week?
Yeah, I did. There will be a Medium post regarding to that, and the Medium post will cover all the instructions of how to do the voting. And yeah, I have started looking a bit into Loki, Road Crypto, and maybe I can talk about a bit about what I've found and what I've learned in regards to it at the end of next week. So when we do next week's meeting, I can give sort of my insight and input on Loki, and we can see if there's anything there that's potentially of use to the community. Yeah, no problem. If people ever have any other projects they want me to take a look into, either because they think it'll be useful to our project or for whatever reason, I mean, they can message me and I can take a look at it when I have a chance and I can give my thoughts on it. Okay, so I think that's about it. If there's anything I missed, we can always bring it up later in the chat and we can go over it. I think the last thing, just to close on as a reminder, is if this meeting time that we've currently been doing meetings at is not a good time for you and you are listening to the recording of this, please let us know more suitable times that would be beneficial to you and that you would be able to make it to the live meetups at, because we are more interested in getting a better community turnout to have better discussions in live rather than having it scattered throughout the chat where it's not as easy for people to find. So that's about it. Thank you guys for coming, and I'll see you guys next week.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.